on his shoulders brought me back to his fold again. While angels in his presence sing, until the courts of heaven reign. Oh, the love that sought me. Oh, the blood that bought me. Oh, the grace that brought me to the fold of God. The grace that brought me to the fold of God. He died for me while I was sitting, needy and poor and blind. He whispered to assure me, I found thee, thou art mine. I never heard a sweeter voice. It made my aching heart rejoice. Oh, the love that sought me. Oh, the blood that bought me. Oh, the grace that brought me to the fold of God. Grace that brought me to the fold of God. Upon his grace I'll daily ponder and sing anew his praise. With all adoring wonder, his blessings I retrace. It seems as if eternal days are far too short to sing his praise. Oh, the love that sought me. Oh, the blood that bought me. Oh, the grace that brought me to the fold of God.
carry sin upon his shoulders, who endured the cross and scorned its shame, who was laid to rest like every other, but who rose again and stormed out of the grave. The mighty Lion of Judah, the pure and spotless Lamb, the Alpha and Omega, the good and great I am, the God that saves the nation, the one we bow before. Let every voice sing out, who is like the Lord? You are the one true King, you're Lord over everything. Jesus, there is no other. Jesus, there is no other. Your word will never change. Your name is here to stay. Jesus, there is no other. Jesus, there is no other. 'Cause you are the one true King, you're Lord over everything. Jesus, there is no other. Jesus, there is no other. And your word will never change. Your name is here to stay. Jesus, there is no other. Jesus, there is no other. The mighty Lion of Judah, the pure and spotless Lamb, the Alpha and Omega, the good and great I am, the God that saves the nations, the one we bow before. Let every voice sing out, who is like the Lord? Who is like the Lord?
You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only.
Were creation suddenly articulate with 1,000 tongues to lift one cry? Then from north to south and east to west, we hear Christ be magnified. Were the whole echoing his eminence, his name would burst from sea and sky, from rivers to the mountain tops. We hear Christ be magnified. And oh, Christ be magnified. Let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified. The altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. When every creature finds its inmost melody, and every human heart its native cry, oh, then in one enraptured hymn of praise we'll sing Christ be magnified. And oh, Christ be magnified. Let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. I won't bow to idols, I'll stand strong and worship you. If it puts me in the fire, I'll rejoice 'cause you're there too. I won't be formed by feelings, I hold fast to what is true. And if the cross brings transformation, I'll be crucified with you. 'Cause death is just the doorway to resurrection life. If I join you in your suffering, then I'll join you when you rise. And when you return in glory with all the angels and the saints, oh, my heart will still be singing, and my song will be the same. Oh, Christ be magnified. Let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me.
Let's pray together. Lord, that's what we've come together to do today, is to magnify your name and to hear you speak to us, to be transformed by your nearness and become more like you even as we praise you and honor you. We think back to that day 2,000 years ago when in your humility you rode into Jerusalem as a king on a donkey to the shouts of Hosanna to the Son of David. And we pray that you would march in triumph into our hearts today. That by your presence, it would be more like you, that we would serve you with more gladness, that we would worship you with more joy, and that we would love our neighbors with that same love with which you have loved us. We thank you for drawing near. We ask that as we prepare to give attention to your word, you would open our hearts to hear you speak. We ask in Jesus' name, amen. Well, good morning, Horizons Church. Would you greet your neighbor before you take your seat? All right. Good morning, everyone. Happy Palm Sunday. Hope that you are all doing well today, and that we're adjusting from the switch to, we all thought spring had come. Turns out winter's back. Can't make up its mind. There are jokes that I want to make that I'm not going to. I'll let your imagination fill in the blanks. If we haven't met yet, my name is Josiah. I'm the lead pastor here at Horizons Church. If we haven't met yet, we're really glad that you're here. And if you're new, we would love to meet you. Pastor Steve's delivering the message today. And when he's finished preaching, he'll be right over at that welcome sign, and he'd love to give you a gift and tell you a little bit more about how you can get connected here at the church if you happen to be new. All right. But aside from that, just a few reminders of some events we've got coming up here. We've got Grief Share starting up the week after Easter. So that's going to be on Tuesdays from 6 to 8, April 2nd. They're going to meet out in the cafe near the couches and the TV over there. And this is a great group. If you've recently experienced a loss, if you're trying to process through some grief and you want to walk through that with some folks you can lean on, Grief Share is a great group. Leanne Romeo leads that for us, and she's done a wonderful job. It's a great ministry. So if that's you, or if perhaps you know someone who you think might benefit from that group, you can sign up for that, griefshare.org, or you can go see Pastor Lucas in the lobby at the end of the service, all right? Another thing we've got going on is another round of the Academy is coming up, Academy Essentials. So this goes right hand in hand with what we've been talking about with rebuilding the foundations. In fact, Pastor Steve preached a whole message basically on the kind of stuff that you're going to be covering in Academy Essentials there a couple weeks ago when he talked about rebuilding the foundations of truth and sound doctrine. So Academy Essentials covers the really fundamental foundational truths of the Christian faith that you have to really get down if you want to grow and deepen in your faith in a healthy way. So if that is something that interests you and you want to participate, that's a 9-week intensive. That starts the weekend after Easter, second service in the loft. And so you can come to this service, and then you can walk right over next door for that one if you want to participate in that. You can register at horizonschurch.net, or again, see Pastor Lucas out in the lobby when you're done, all right? Speaking of all that, the other thing that is coming up next weekend, if you can believe it or not, is Easter. Easter weekend is upon us, which is very exciting. And here at the Lost Creek campus, we're going to have all our normal service times, Saturday 6:30, and our 2 Sunday services. And we're going to pack this room full of a bunch of extra chairs, so we should have plenty of room. So this is a great opportunity, just as a reminder, to invite family and friends who maybe have been out of church for a while, or who otherwise wouldn't think about darkening the door of a church. A lot of folks that wouldn't come otherwise will come for an Easter service. I was also reading a book recently where the author was saying that people who dropped out of church attendance during COVID and haven't come back yet, 9 out of 10 times, they're just waiting for someone to personally tap them on the shoulder and invite them back. So if you happen to know someone, Easter's a great time to invite them. Couldn't think of a better time to bring them along. So normal service times here for Easter weekend. We look forward to celebrating the resurrection of Jesus with you all right? And other than that, as a final reminder, the weekend after Easter, we're going to be incorporating a couple new elements into our worship service. We're going to have a corporate confession of sin and a corporate profession of faith. And we are saying that by way of reminder so that when it happens, you're not wondering what in the world's going on. Everything's going to be done up here on the screens for you, so nothing you have to worry about, but just wanted to give you a heads up. That's coming our way week after Easter. All right? Now, without any further ado, I'm done talking. Everyone said, finally. So, we've got one brief video announcement, and then Pastor Steve is up to conclude our Rebuilding the Foundation series.
We are about to listen to a message taught from God's Word. This is one of the most important parts of our gathering. Therefore, we ask you to silence your cell phone, not engage in conversation, and not allow your child to cause a distraction. If your little one does create a distraction, we kindly ask you to respect those around you by taking your child to our clean, safe nursery, using our family viewing area in the cafe, or one of our cry rooms located behind you, where you can see and hear everything, and your child will appreciate the extra freedom.
Well, we are living in a time that is just attacking and eroding the very foundations that we build our lives, our family, our church, and our nation upon. And we believe that as a church, we are to be the salt and light of the world. And so we want to rebuild those foundations that are being torn down and give a gift to not only ourselves, but to our families, our church, and our nation, that we could continue on and we could make a difference in this world without just self-destructing. And so we have been setting out three, Christ is our cornerstone. If you think of it as kind of four corners, Christ the cornerstone. And we've set out three different principles we want to start working on. And then the balance of this decade, we want to continue working on these, kind of get these plates spinning, and then add three more and keep those and then we'll have a whole series of things that we'll be working on the balance of the decade that are really foundational to our lives, to our families, to our church, to our nation. And we want to rebuild those things in our lives so we can see those things rebuilt around us. Well, today we are going to deal with the third of these initial three. We've already talked about this foundation of truth and sound teaching, doctrine. We've talked about education and character formation that comes out of that. Today we're going to talk about this principle of human worth, human dignity, and the rights and justice that grows out of that. So today we're going to launch into that in a message we've just entitled, Value, Dignity, and Human Rights. When I was a sophomore in high school, every time I turned on the television, a professor from Stanford University named Paul Ehrlich was on somebody's television show warning us that the earth was on a collision course with starvation and disease and climate meltdown because there were just too many people on the planet. He warned us that if we didn't listen to him and take drastic measures to reduce the population of the earth, that we would destroy our planet and ourselves. In 1968, when all this was happening, we only had 3 television stations, and Paul Ehrlich was on every one of them. And he was on there hawking his book that he'd written called The Population Bomb. And Walter Cronkite had him on his show, and Chet Huntley and David Brinkley had him on the nightly news, and Johnny Carson had him on The Tonight Show repeatedly. Everywhere you turn, Paul Ehrlich and his population activists or on TV telling us that the earth could only feed 4 billion people, and in just 2 years, we were going to exceed that number. And once we did, Mr. Ehrlich warned us, the world would descend into a period of time that would be marked by famine and chaos and disease as nations and neighbors fought over the limited food supplies of the earth. So for weeks, for months, Mr. Ehrlich looked into the cameras of television stations, and he assured us that he was a scientist, and science had spoken, and its verdict was clear. If we didn't listen to his warnings and take draconian measures to stop the growing population of the earth, then civilized countries like the United States would be devastated, the earth would be destroyed, and countries like Great Britain would cease to exist. Now, Mr. Ehrlich insisted that enlightened countries like the United States had to take immediate action and began to use coercion and sterilization to do their part to curb overpopulation in this world. But he said that some nations could not and should not be saved because they would not listen to science and they continue to overpopulate the earth. And these population offenders, nations like India and Egypt and Mexico, were beyond help. And so we must allow them to starve to death so that the rest of the world could be saved and so that the population of the world could return to a sustainable number, 2 to 2.5 million people. And once that number had been reached, Mr. Ehrlich assured us that enlightened people in the world could maintain that level of population so that the earth could be saved and survivors could thrive. Or to put it another way, Paul Ehrlich went on national television and told us that the sky was falling. And in order to save the earth and preserve the enlightened people of the world, we needed to get rid of about half the people who were living on this planet and trample on the rights and the dignity of the other half. Now, despite Paul Ehrlich's scientific certainty that the earth was only able, he was just scientifically certain that the earth was only able to feed and sustain 4 billion people and no more. In spite of the fact that he was absolutely certain about that, none of the catastrophes that he predicted actually took place, and none of them actually happened when the population of the earth actually exceeded 4 billion people just 2 years later. But the question is why? Why didn't Mr. Ehrlich's terrible predictions come true? Did he get the math wrong? I mean, did he just miscalculate how much food it would take to feed 4 billion people? No, Mr. Ehrlich's math was spot on. Given the amount of food that human beings were able to produce in 1968, he was right. We could only feed 4 billion people, no more. Well, then, was he wrong about how fast the population of the earth was growing? No, he was right about that too. The population of the earth was on course to reach 4 billion people in just 2 more years, and it did. 1970, it hit 4 billion people. So if Paul Ehrlich's math was right, why didn't all these devastating catastrophes happen when the population of the earth exceeded 4 billion people? Well, to put it simply, Paul Ehrlich understood the principles of math, but he did not understand the nature of man. Mr. Ehrlich refused to believe that human beings were made in the image of a creative, innovative, problem-solving God, and therefore he refused to believe that human beings were able to create, innovate, and solve problems that other creatures on the planet could not solve. Just give you an example, show you what I mean by that. Now, you're aware that hawks like chickens, right? They have a predilection for they love chickens. But humans love chickens too, right? Anybody been to Chick-fil-A? Hawks like chickens, we like chickens. But if the population of hawks goes up, you get more hawks, guess what happens to the number of chickens? The number of chickens goes down because they'll keep picking off that chickens until they're down to a meager few, and then they'll fight over the scraps that are left. But that's not the way it works for people, because we're made in the image of God. And so if you have more people in the world who happen to like chicken, guess what happens? You get more chickens. Because when an image bearer figures out that he really likes chicken, he also figures out a way to raise more chickens, and so he never runs out of them. Now, no other creature on the planet can do that, because no other creature on the planet is made in the image of a creative, innovative, problem-solving God. And in 1968, when Paul Ehrlich assumed that human beings were no different than a bunch of hungry hawks looking for chickens, he made a fool of himself, and he made a fool of everyone who listened to him, because he assumed we were no different than any other creature on the planet. Because while Paul Ehrlich and his band of activists were busy telling us that the sky was falling and that the only way to save the world was to get rid of half the population that was on the earth, Ironically, the very people that Mr. Ehrlich wanted to get rid of solved the population problem. But they didn't solve the problem by killing half the people on the planet. They solved the problem by doubling the amount of food that farmers could produce in a year. You see, in 1968, farmers in the very countries, India, Egypt, Mexico, in the very countries that Paul Ehrlich wanted to write off and sentence to starvation because they refused to listen to the science, those very countries launched what became known as the Green Revolution. Very different than the Green New Deal, all right? They launched the Green Revolution. And over the next 12 years, that revolution spread across the world and transformed the farming industry. And as a result, the farmers of the world more than doubled the amount of food that they could produce in a year, and thereby more than doubled the number of people that they could feed and sustain on this planet. How'd they do that? How'd they pull that off? Well, the cornerstone of the Green Revolution was that some scientists who were made in the image of a creative, innovative, problem-solving God figured out how to create fertilizer that was made from all things, from things that you would not imagine, but they said we could make fertilizer out of natural gas. And using the fertilizer that was made from natural gas, they more than doubled the crop yield of the world. Each year, somewhere around 45% of natural gas that we extract from the ground is turned into fertilizer distributed around the world. And because of that fertilizer, we can now feed not 4 billion people, but 8 billion people and counting. You see, Mr. Ehrlich didn't have a problem understanding the principles of math. He had a problem understanding the nature of man. And when any movement or any ideology misunderstands the nature of man, it always creates some mutant form of justice that allows its followers to ignore the innate value and dignity of human beings, trample upon their God-given rights so that they can pursue their cause and achieve their goals. And when the unconvinced people of the world question their unjust methods, the oldest trick in the book for the followers of that ideology is to insist they must do these terrible things to other human beings because they're just trying to save the world. They're just trying to save the world. The sky's falling, and we got to save the world. So we have to do these things. Now, when I was 15 years old, I'd never heard anybody come on national television and tell me, hey, in the name of science, the sky's falling. And if we as a nation don't listen if you don't listen to what I'm saying, take drastic steps that I'm proposing and sentence half the world to a slow and painful death, then the earth is going to be destroyed and you with it, and it's all going to happen in just a few years. I was 15. I'd never heard anybody make such an outrageous claim, and I wasn't quite sure what to do with it. But you might have noticed I'm not 15 anymore. I'm as old as dirt. And over the last 56 years, I've seen lots of evil men and women make such claims. And I've discovered that any time someone ignores the innate value and dignity of human beings and tramples on their God-given rights in the name of science in order to achieve some goal or to save the world, it's never about science. It's always about evil men using evil means to promote some evil ideology. And so when some woke scientist comes on television today and tells me in the name of science that the sky is falling and that the world is going to end in just a few years, I think we're at about 5 years off right now. It's going to end in a few years if we don't heed their warning and take drastic steps and then end the world's dependence on fossil fuels no matter the cost. I got to admit, my spidey senses go up. And I'm more than a little suspicious. And when I get suspicious, I dig a little deeper to find out what's going on. And when I dug a little deeper, you know what I found? I found that the climate czar of the United States of America and the climate activists that he has, and by the way, there's just been proposed that they add 50,000 people to help him. They aren't just coming for your cars and your gas stoves. They want to eliminate the very fertilizer that allows us to feed 8 billion people in this world. And why do they want to eliminate that fertilizer that's been a miracle to the world and a gift to the world? Well, because that fertilizer is made from natural gas. And natural gas is a what? It's a fossil fuel. And using a fossil fuel in the woke world, well, that's a sin. And so we are told in the name of science we must stop using such fertilizer in order to save the earth, even though doing so will sentence half of the world. We're talking 4 billion with a B. 4 billion people to die of starvation. And who will pay the price for this folly? Not the woke activist, not John Kerry or his successor. No, they'll have plenty of food on their plates. Now, it'll be the poorest nations of the world who die for this woke insanity. You know, ironically, those who are fond of calling other people racists, they're more than willing to sacrifice the brown and the black and the Asian poor of this world on the altar of climate change to save the world. And that, my friends, is not science. Science doesn't lie, but scientists do. That's not science. It's just an evil man and evil men promoting an evil ideology that denies the value and the dignity of human beings and tramples upon their God-given rights so they can pursue their cause and get what they want. Now you may say, but Steve, we have to stop using those fertilizers because they're producing algae plumes in the ocean. And I would say to you, I don't doubt that they are. That's what fertilizer does. But we are made in the image of a creative, innovative, problem-solving God. So here's an idea. Why don't we figure out a way to harvest those algae plumes and turn them into something that will help 8 billion people on this planet thrive and find their creator, rather than killing half of them to save the world? Why don't we do that? See, we are living in a time of unprecedented evil because we are living in a time of unprecedented error. And when woke activists are willing to kill half the people on this planet to save the earth, that, my friend, is not science. It is a profound evil that is rooted in a profound misunderstanding of the value and dignity of human beings. Because whenever an ideology refuses to believe that human beings are made in the image and likeness of their Creator, the followers of that ideology will always, always, always create some mutant form of justice that will allow them to ignore the value and the dignity of human beings and trample upon their rights, their God-given rights, so they can pursue their cause and achieve their goal. And they'll always say, we're doing it because the sky is falling and we got to save the world. Now, if that kind of evil makes your blood boil and your righteous indignation ignites and you just want to do something, good. We're glad you're here. You're in the right place. Because we happen to believe that the value and dignity of human beings is foundational. It's one of those foundational truths that we build our lives, our families, our church, and our nation upon. But unfortunately, it's a truth that is under constant attack in our world, and evil men and women would like nothing more than for churches like us to raise the white flag and surrender this truth. But we cannot do that because the value and dignity of image bearers is the foundational truth upon which human relationships, human governments, human rights, and the very principles of justice are built upon. And so if we surrender this truth and allow it to lie and ruin our lives, our family, our church, and our nation, we'll pay a terrible price for such a surrender. And so in the balance of the time that we have today, we're going to make sure that we understand the importance of this foundational truth, that human beings have dignity and value as image bearers, And in the balance of this decade, we're going to defend and promote that truth out there in the world and in our church. And we're going to model to a broken world how imperfect image bearers are to be treated. So to start doing that, we're going to just make sure that we understand what it means to bear the image of God, and we want to make sure we understand how that truth defines our value and our dignity. And that brings us to this first point. Bearing God's image gives us an innate value and dignity that people can celebrate or deny, but they cannot change. Just bearing the image of God gives us an innate, built-in. It isn't somebody gives to you. It's a gift from God. It's yours by birthright. Gives us an innate value and dignity that people can celebrate, they can deny it, but they can't change it. Now, when you open up your Bible and start reading in the very first chapter of the very first book, one of the very first things that you're going to discover is that human beings are made in the image of God. Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 or 27 says, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them." Now, the secular world would have us believe that we're just kind of a cosmic accident, an evolutionary hiccup in this world. They would have us to believe that we are just a bunch of carbon molecules that somehow Forrest Gumped our way into life. And therefore, we have no distinct value or special dignity in this world. We are just another species of animals. That's the secular view of you. God, however, has a very different view of who you are, because God insists that you are distinct from the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and the animals that roam the earth, because God said that he created you and me with both a physical body and an immaterial soul. Now, our bodies reflect many of the physical qualities that are found in the animal world. But our souls reflect many of the immaterial qualities that are found in our Creator. In fact, God's built so many reflections of himself into our souls that that immaterial part of us is called the image of God in man. We're not called image bearers because we have a physical body. We are called image bearers because we have an immaterial soul that reflects our Creator. What do I mean by that? Well, here's some examples. God's eternal. His life never ends. So are we. God can imagine something that doesn't exist, then design it, create it, and spin innovations off of it. So can we. You might have noticed we have television sets in our living rooms. Badgers and groundhogs don't. You know, we have air-conditioned homes. Foxes don't. We have jacuzzis and hot tubs on our decks. Birds don't even have decks. They don't have these things because they don't bear the image of God and they can't think them up and create them, but we can. God has an amazing ability to solve complex problems. So do we. God has a conscience that tells him right from wrong. So do we. God can communicate with amazing depth and clarity and emotion through both spoken word and written language. So can we. Only creatures on the planet. God experiences this full keyboard of emotions. So do we. God can create human beings who possess an eternal soul. And through the gift of procreation, guess what? So can we. Now, that's not an exhaustive list of all the ways that we reflect our Creator, but it gives you a snapshot of what I mean when I say that we bear the image of God. But being an image bearer doesn't just give us the ability to do things that other creatures can't. It also gives us a unique value and dignity in this world that other creatures on this planet do not possess. Consider, for example, what God told Noah when he came off the ark after the Noahic flood. They came off the ark. brought all these animals off the ark. God pointed the animals, and he told them, if one of those animals kills a human being, you got to put that animal down. And now the very next thing he says after saying that is, and from each man too. I said, if an animal kills a man, the animal, he says, has to be disposed of. He has to be put down. He says, and from each man too, I will demand an accounting. I will demand a just reckoning for the life of his fellow man. What do you mean by that, God? He says, whoever sheds the blood of man by a constituted authority, not as a vigilante, but as a constituted authority, shall his blood be shed. Why would we do that, God? For in the image of God, God has made man. Because he's an image bearer, there must be a reckoning if another image bearer takes his life. So what's God's point? Is God just some kind of a bloodthirsty deity who's out for vengeance? No, he's making a point about the value and dignity of human life. You see, before the flood, there was no human government. There were no policemen. You didn't have to have a defund the police movement because there were no policemen. There were no courts. There were no jails. There were just sinful men who were being guided by their own conscience before God. How'd that work out, by the way? You might remember that didn't work out very well. The whole earth became so filled with murder and violence and evil that God decided to turn the Etch-a-Sketch upside down and shake it and start over. He sent a worldwide flood and started over with 8 people. Noah, Mrs. Noah, and his 3 boys and their wives. But when Noah and his family came off the ark to launch this new world, God established the very first human government, and the first job that he gave to human government was to instill the value and the dignity of human life in this new generation that was going to populate the earth. And he said, I want to do that by requiring an accounting, a just reckoning for anyone who intentionally takes the life of another image bearer. God's told Noah, if a human being intentionally murders another image bearer, he had to make restitution and had to make a just reckoning. There had to be a just reckoning, a just restitution for the life of that person he had taken, and it had to be of equal value. So the question is, well, how much is the life of an image bearer worth? I mean, if I kill somebody intentionally, I just murder them, will 100 camels satisfy the debt that I owe? If so, then the image bearer is worth 100 camels. And God said, no. 100 camels won't do it. Well, what if I give you 100 camels, if that's enough, and I add my house and my life savings? Is that enough? No, it is not enough. What if I give you everything I possess and I promise to give you all the money I ever make? Will that do it? And God's answer is no, it will not. Because the only thing that is of equal value to an image bearer on planet Earth is what? Another image bearer. There is nothing of equal value to an image bearer than another image bearer. And so if you intentionally take the life of a human being, the only thing you possess that is of equal value to what you took is your own life. That's the value of an image bearer. And you can celebrate that value, or you can deny that value by mistreating them, but you cannot change that, because that value is his by virtue of bearing the image of God. But it doesn't stop there, because God tells us that if a person offends me, the very fact that he bears the image of God shapes how I can speak to him when he ticketh me off, you know? James chapter 3, verse 9 says, with the tongue we praise our Lord and Father, just like we did a few minutes ago, and with it, the tongue, we curse men who have been made how? In God's likeness, in his image. And then he adds, my brothers, this should not be. Now, I don't know about you, but I find that to be a very inconvenient truth. I mean, there are just some people that deserve a good cursing on there. I mean, but God says, no, you cannot do that. Because Because image bearers are not to be spoken to that way. You can disagree with them. You can correct an image bearer. You can expose his lies. You can lay bare his sins, but you may not curse him. You may not treat him like a dog. You can confront him, but when you do so, you must do so respectfully. Not because he's a good man, probably not, but because he bears the image of God, and that gives him an innate value and dignity that must be honored. You see, the bottom line is he's an image bearer, and therefore he must be treated as one. You see, bearing the image of God not only gives us our value, it also gives us certain inalienable rights. Or to say it another way, image bearers have the right to be treated as image bearers, even when they're imperfect and flawed. And from that biblical truth flows all of our human rights. And that's why our forefathers said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Not equal in stature, not equal in wealth, not even equal in ability, equal in value because they bear the image of God. We hold this truth to be self-evident that we are all created equal, of equal value by God. And we are endowed, not by government, but by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, of which are life and liberty, pursuit of happiness, just to name 3. They added 10 more later. Now, the woke world insists that our rights, what we call rights, are just privileges that the government bestows upon us, and if they bestowed it upon us, they can take it back. If you don't believe me, read Politico. They just wrote a whole article about this and tried to re-educate the world on where our rights come from. But our forefathers understood that the government does not give us our rights. God gave us our rights when he stamped his image upon our soul, and the bottom line is that image bearers have the right to be treated as image bearers, and justice makes sure that they are. And that brings us to our second life principle. Sounds like this. Because we bear God's image, we possess human rights, and justice demands that those very rights that we have as image bearers, it demands that those be celebrated and protected by us and by our government. Now, most of us are pretty psyched when we find out that we have God-given rights simply because we bear the image of God. That's pretty cool. But the rub comes when I realize that if I possess these rights, so does my annoying neighbor. Because he bears the image of God too. And therefore, regardless of his race, regardless of his political party, regardless of his social status, or regardless of his moral failures, he has the right to be treated as his image bearer, just like me. Now, God has given us some specific guidance on how to do this. 6 of the 10 commandments address this issue. Why isn't it okay to steal my neighbor's possessions? Why can't I do that? Why can't I sleep with his wife? Why can't I lie to him or lie about him to others? Why is it wrong to covet his possessions or to take his life? Why can't I disrespect those who gave birth to me? I lived with them long enough to know they're pretty imperfect people. Well, you could probably cite a lot of practical reasons why you shouldn't do those things, but justice says we don't do those things to our neighbor because our neighbor is an image bearer, and image bearers have the right to be treated like one. And so these are the kind of things you don't do. As long as Adam was in the garden by himself, none of those things were necessary. He didn't need 6 of the 10 commandments as long as he was in the garden with him and just God. But when Eve was born, was brought into this world, he created Eve, suddenly he needed 6 more commandments. Because now he had to be concerned not just with holiness, but with justice. And if you're in a situation where you're just not sure what you need to do in order to treat your neighbor in the way he should be treated as an image bearer, then Jesus gave you a simple way to figure it out. It's called the golden rule. He said, and so in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you, for this sums up the law and the prophets. Do unto others as you would have them do to you. This is not a promise. This is a principle. Jesus isn't saying, well, you treat people well, they'll treat you well. How many of you found that works out? I haven't. That's not the math. No. He's not saying do this so they'll be nice to you. No, he's saying do unto others as you would have them do to you, not because they're good, not because they're nice, not because they're going to return the favor, but because they bear the image of God just like you. And therefore they have the right to be treated as an image bearer. Now, 163 years ago, President Lincoln applied this very principles to the evil of slavery. And he said, I quote, nothing stamped with the divine image and likeness was sent into this world to be trodden on, degraded, and imbruted by its fellows. That's a pretty elegant statement. But he's saying slaves are image bearers, and you can't treat them this way. See, it took us 4 years, and it cost us 600,000 American lives to end the atrocity of slavery, and we paid that price because every slave was an image bearer, and justice demands that every image bearer has the right to be treated as one. It is not a gift. It is their right. Now, our woke politicians, professors, and partners and their partners in the media are currently obsessed with relitigating a slavery that ended 160 years ago. And they're doing that while ignoring that 10 million people have been enslaved under their watch in the last 5 years, and they've done nothing to stop it, often enabled it. I don't know if you realize it, but there are more people living in slavery today, and this day in March 2024, more people living in slavery today than there were enslaved for the entire 300-year period of slavery in America. That's a fact. There are currently, it is estimated, 50 million people being trafficked in forced labor and sexual slavery around the world, and a very large number of them are children and women. Over the last 3 years, the woke policies of our own president allowed 38,000 unaccompanied children to come across our southern border with just a phone number in their hand. The drug cartels gave them that phone number and told them, when they got to America, call this number. And when they called that number, a complete stranger showed up and whisked them away. And the Department of Homeland Security didn't even vet those ominous strangers. You had to do more to adopt a dog than you did to get one of those kids. They just handed 38,000 kids over to evil men, and now those kids have disappeared, and we have no idea where they are. When the agents who fight sex trafficking in America and in the world were asked, is it possible? Tell me it's not possible, but is it possible that those 38,000 kids ended up in sexual slavery? They said, and I quote, these are not my words, it's theirs. It is not a possibility, it is a certainty. The woke policies and practices of our politicians and activists put 38,000 kids into the hands of sex traffickers. About a year ago, a movie called The Sound of Freedom hit the big screen, and it shined a very bright light on this woke evil. But rather than repenting and stopping this injustice, our woke politicians and their partners in the media attacked the movie. Disney tried to keep it from even being shown. They smeared the Christian that movie was about, told all sorts of lies and atrocities about him. And they tried to stop Americans from even going and seeing it. Millions of Americans went anyway. And The Sound of Freedom became one of the most watched movies in 2023. Now, the Bible says that when the righteous thrive, the word thrive literally is grow in power or grow and become great. That is, when the righteous thrive, they grow in power, they gain positions of power and authority. When that happens in a family, in an organization, or in a nation, the people rejoice. But when the wicked rule, the people groan. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that 38,000 children are groaning in sexual slavery today because wicked men and women in our country hold positions of power and authority. And a million people are added to the roster of sexual slavery every year because the wicked are more interested in climate change than they are in the value and the dignity of human life. I hope that you are praying every day for a revival in our country. I hope that you're praying every day for the removal of evil leaders who make our country groan. I hope that touches something deep in you, disturbs you, and makes you righteously indignant. But it's not enough to be angry at such injustice, because we don't overcome evil with anger. We overcome evil with good. Anger can make us do good, but it is the good, not our anger, that overcomes evil. And so over the balance of us coming decade, we're going to redouble our efforts to stop this scourge of forced labor and sexual slavery, not only in our country, but in the world. We currently support 7 church orphan homes in Cambodia, and every one of those homes rescue orphans off the streets and villages of Cambodia and give them a home and an education, and they give them a family, a church family, and a future. And because you give sacrificially to care for our kids in Cambodia, we keep hundreds of orphans out of the hands of sex traffickers and put them into the hands of Jesus. Now, our church orphan homes and hundreds like them in Cambodia are currently the most effective tool we have to keep kids and orphans out of the hands of predators. But we don't want to just stop in Cambodia, and so we're going to start partnering with a Christian organization called the International Justice Mission so we can help fight sex trafficking here in America and around the world, and we can help those who are being rescued from this evil, help them rebuild their lives. Because we believe that every image bearer has the right to be treated like one, and we believe that justice make sure that they are. The woke world will never address this evil, but we can, because as the proverb says, it's the righteous, it's the righteous who care about justice for the poor, but the wicked have no such concern. So I just want to thank you for caring for our orphans in Cambodia. I want to thank you for giving sacrificially. I just remind you, Easter is coming up, and we top off our support for those orphans every year at Easter. And so if you have an extra have some extra money, you can put into the coffers at Easter, $280. We'll support one of our kids for a year. And if you want to know more about ending sexual slavery and helping the victims of it recover, go to the International Justice Mission's website and check it out. And I would encourage you, go find the movie. Watch Sound of Freedom. The woke world hated it. I'm sure you'll love it. Yeah. In the meantime, here's what I want you to remember. I want you to remember that you're not a cosmic accident. You're an image bearer. And so is your imperfect neighbor. And I want you to remember that every image bearer has the right, not the gift. Every image bearer has the right to be treated like one. And the job of justice is to make sure they are. That's the side I want to be on. I hope you'll join me. God bless you. You have a great week. If you need to talk to me, I'll be over there.